Compare the guys in the mob to the stuff you're hearing alleged against Diddy.
If we did that in the mob, we would be for it. We would never touch women and children and stuff like that. So that's against our rules, our principles.
An ex-organized crime insider just dropped a bombshell about why Diddy's new prison might be worse than the nightmare he just escaped. And what he said is unbelievable. You click this video because you want the real story. What's actually happening to Diddy behind those walls? And trust me, it gets darker the deeper you go. Diddy was recently moved to a different facility in New Jersey called Fort Dix. At first glance, it looks like a major upgrade. More freedom, cleaner environment, better living conditions. But here's the part almost no one is talking about. A former mobster, someone who's lived this life, claims that this better prison could actually put Diddy in more danger than the brutal hole he was trapped in before. Sounds insane, right? How could a nicer prison be the bigger threat? Stick around because in this video you're going to learn why improved prison conditions might actually increase the danger for Diddy, the terrifying knife attack that nearly ended him, what real mobsters think about the charges he's facing, and the shocking reason a low-security prison might be Diddy's worst nightmare yet. Let's break this down. Before we get into the chaos at Fort Dix, you need the full picture. Diddy was hit with a roughly 4-year sentence connected to prostitution-related charges. He's already spent about a year locked up awaiting trial, which leaves him with around 2.5 years left. Now the place he came from? MDC Brooklyn. And that facility has been described as nothing short of hell. Violence nonstop, infestations of rats and roaches, rotten food, stabbings week after week. It's one of the most feared federal detention centers in the country. So when Diddy was finally transferred to Fort Dix last week, people assumed, okay, he's finally catching a break. Photos even leaked of him smiling in the yard, talking with other inmates. He actually looked relaxed for the first time in months. But here's the twist. Sometimes the prisons that look safer are the ones where you're actually the most exposed. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. Trust me, you're going to want to hear this. Before we get into Fort Dix, let me tell you what really went down at his old facility, because what happened there was absolutely insane.
I was sleeping in my bed in the prison. It's a federal detention facility in Brooklyn called MDC Brooklyn, and there are federal inmates who are in many cases waiting for their trial as well. And Diddy claimed that somebody held a knife to his throat. He woke up and this guy basically had him, and he had the knife, and Diddy was at this person's mercy now. And I think that was something they wanted known during the hearing because they wanted the judge to take some pity on Diddy. It probably didn't help ultimately because he does get the 4+ year sentence. But again, this just is something that is the reality of life for Diddy right now. It's a guy who's worth hundreds of millions of dollars who is now living in a prison cell and will be at least, again, for the next 2.5 years or so.
So, Michael, obviously it was kind of like an intimidation tactic, right? It didn't seem like they were actually trying to hurt them.
One of Diddy's friends, and that's why the story is kind of has gotten a little bit more attention now today, because one of Diddy's friends has come out and spoken about it as well. And it according to the friend, it sounds like the guy said something to the effect of, "I could hurt you at any time," in a little bit of more threatening language.
Picture this. New details just leaked that someone put a knife to Diddy's throat while he was asleep. Let that sink in. You're Diddy. You're a global icon. You're worth hundreds of millions. And you open your eyes to an inmate standing over you with a blade pressed against your neck. One slight movement, one twitch. And it's over. Done. Finished. But the attacker didn't strike. Instead, he delivered a message far more terrifying. I can get to you whenever I want. Nobody knows exactly what happened after that moment. Did the guards storm in? Did the attacker walk away on his own? Did Diddy fight back? We don't have those details. But one of Diddy's close friends confirmed the attack was real and that it wasn't about killing him. It was about breaking him. Pure psychological warfare. point was to remind Diddy that he's exposed, that he's reachable, that no amount of fame or money can protect him in there. Imagine trying to sleep after something like that. You can't. Every noise becomes a threat. Every shadow feels like a warning. That's not just fear, that's mental torture. And this is where things get even more chilling. Because former mob figure Michael Francesi, a man who survived real time in the system, just weighed in. And what he said flips this entire situation upside down. And if you think the worst is over, it's not even close.
And he'll be a lot better off in prison than he is in the federal jail. You know, at least there you can move around and you got some freedom on the yard and things like that. You know, my thought is he'll collect himself, get himself together. You know, there are ways for him to improve himself. You know, they have the Bureau of Prisons now has a drug program. And if you're allowed to get into that drug program, you can knock as much as 18 months off your sentence. Now, I don't know if he'll qualify, if they'll allow him to go in, but he'll probably start to think about, okay, what can I do to reduce my time now? That's what everybody thinks when you get in there.
After someone receives their sentence, they usually return to their cell feeling crushed, frustrated, angry, and replaying endless what-ifs. What if the judge gave me a break? What if the jury saw it differently? Francesi explained that Diddy will likely remain at MDC for a couple more weeks before being moved to the facility where he'll actually serve his time. What's interesting is that the former mobster believes the next prison might be better in certain ways. More freedom to move around, an actual yard, fresh air, and a few decent programs. There's even a drug treatment program that could shave up to 18 months off his sentence. If Diddy qualifies, he could walk out earlier than expected. His legal team probably asked for a prison near his family in New Jersey, which honestly makes sense. Having family close makes doing time a little easier mentally. But now things get tricky, and this is the part that really matters. Diddy technically qualifies for a minimum security camp, the country club level of federal prison. These places barely have fences and feel more like a relaxed campus than a penitentiary.
Because he's high profile, even though his sentence qualifies him for a camp, it's a low security, sentence. But my feeling is he'll get into at least a medium because he's so high profile.
But the ex-mobster doesn't think
Diddy will ever be placed in one of those camps. His reasoning? Diddy is simply too high profile and too wealthy. Francesi lived through this himself. Once inmates know you have money or status, everyone wants something from you. They start thinking long-term. This guy could help me when he gets out. He could change my life. In medium security, most inmates aren't out to hurt someone like Diddy. They want favors, connections, business opportunities. So ironically, being rich can actually keep you safer in that environment. But here's the catch. That protection only works as long as people believe you hold value. If they think you're more useful alive, you're okay. But if rumors spread that you know things, dangerous things, then suddenly you're worth more dead or silenced. And with all the whispers about Diddy having information involving powerful names, similar to the Epstein situation, that puts him in a very risky spot. Now let's compare his new home, Fort Dix, to the nightmare he left behind. Diddy's new mugshot from Fort Dix was released, and the quality is shockingly bad for 2025. But one thing stands out, far more gray in his beard. The stress is obvious. MDC Brooklyn was infested with rats and insects, served spoiled food, and had constant violence. It was a living hell. Fort Dix, on the other hand, is huge. It has outdoor space, better programs, and better food. Photos even show Diddy smiling, talking with other inmates, and blending in well. His new job is laundry duty, not glamorous, but standard prison work. His projected release date is May 2028, around 2.5 years from now. But the real question is whether these better conditions actually make his situation worse. This is where the mobster's warning becomes crystal clear. The very same low security that makes Fort Dix comfortable is also what makes it dangerous. At MDC, strict security made it nearly impossible to make secret calls or move around unnoticed. Guards monitored everything. But at Fort Dix?
Secondly, here recently, it was alleged that Diddy was caught with some type of electronic device. I'm guessing a cell phone. So since then, when Diddy first arrived at Fort Dix, it was slated that his job would be, y'all don't laugh, okay? That he would be the laundryman, that he would be responsible for the dryer. But since then, in a most recent update, Diddy is now responsible. His job is slated as being a worker in the chapel library. I guess that's the easiest way to put it. But from everything that Diddy has done in these past 2, almost 3 weeks, Diddy will now spend an additional month behind bars from the violations that he has done. Per the, what board is it? I want to make sure. The Federal Corrections Institute update, the website. Diddy's new release date is June 4th, 2028, when it previously was May 8th, 2028.
Reports say Diddy has already started reaching out to powerful industry contacts from inside his new cell. The security is relaxed enough that he can communicate with people on the outside. But here's the scary part. If he can reach out, others can reach in. Loose security works both ways. Anyone who wants access to him can get it. And for someone believed to hold information about influential individuals, much like Epstein did, that's a huge red flag. People forget what happened to Epstein. Again, not saying that's what's going to happen here, but the comparison is unavoidable. When you know too much, you become a liability. So yes, Fort Dix might look nicer, but for someone in Diddy's unique position, it might be far more dangerous. And the warning signs are already showing. Diddy is already getting into trouble.
Y'all, Diddy just had his prison release date pushed further back. Now, we knew that it was going to be May 8th, 2028, but now it's going to be June 4th, 2028, and this is a direct result of him violating the prison rules. Things like the toilet wine that he drank, despite the fact that he claimed that he was sober, as well as, well, actually, I think this is just for the toilet wine. This isn't even consequences for the three-way phone call he got in trouble for the other day. Now look, I realize that that's only a little bit less than a month than what he's got on now, which doesn't...
TMZ reported that not long after arriving at Fort Dix, Diddy was caught with homemade alcohol. He was literally brewing hooch, a mix of Fanta, sugar, and apples left to ferment for a couple of weeks. Reports say Diddy has already started reaching out to powerful industry contacts from inside his new cell. The security is relaxed enough that he can communicate with people on the outside. But here's the scary part. If he can reach out, others can reach in. Loose security works both ways. Anyone who wants access to him can get it. And for someone believed to hold information about influential individuals, much like Epstein did, that's a huge red flag. People forget what happened to Epstein. Again, not saying that's what's going to happen here, but the comparison is unavoidable. When you know too much, you become a liability. So yes, Fort Dix might look nicer, but for someone in Diddy's unique position, it might be far more dangerous. And the warning signs are already showing. Diddy is already getting into trouble. It's been a prison tradition forever. Officials considered moving him to another unit because of it, but ultimately didn't, at least not yet. But this is where it becomes a problem. Violating prison rules can add time to his sentence. If he keeps doing things like this, he's only making life harder for himself. Diddy just got into a better facility. Risking that over-hooch is wild. But when you've lived your entire life getting whatever you want, being told no becomes a hard adjustment. Now here's the part that stunned everyone.
I am curious if you, having gone through it all, having been pulled under the RICO statute and been locked away yourself, do you see that racketeering applies in what you're hearing out of Diddy's case so far?
Yeah, parts of it. The racketeering law is a very complicated law. I was arrested a couple of times under RICO, and a couple of times I testified in cases that the RICO law was used. And it's easy to understand when you're using it against the mafia or a cartel or an organization like that, a criminal organization. This is a different form of the RICO, where the organization is where Diddy had his company. He used that as a criminal organization, but it's going to be a little hard to understand for a lot of people. There's confusion. Lawyers are confused about it. I'm a little confused about it. I think they have a clear-cut case without the RICO case. I mean, what this guy did is disgusting. I don't think there's a person alive, a man or a woman, especially women, who are not going to hate this guy. Whatever he did was completely disgusting. It's beyond criminal. I don't even know what it is. I look at it like he disgraced everybody. He disgraced the black race by being a black man. I know a lot of black people, and they hate him for it because it painted a picture towards all of them. I think it's being followed all over the world. If he's not found guilty, or he's cut free, or he does a short amount of time, I mean, I could only imagine what the whole world would think. This is a disgusting country.
Former mob underboss Sammy the Bull Gravano spoke out about Diddy's case. If you don't know, Sammy was one of the highest-ranking mobsters ever and knows the RICO law better than almost anyone, because he was charged under it multiple times. Here's what he said, and this is nearly word for word. What this guy did is disgusting. There isn't a person alive who won't hate him. But then he dropped something even heavier. If someone in the mob did what he did, they'd be killed for it. Think about that. A man involved in organized crime, someone who's seen and done things most people can't even imagine, is saying Diddy crossed a line even the mob doesn't cross. Sammy explained the mob had rules. You never harm women or children. It was a sacred code. Anyone who violated it was taken out by their own crew. He mentioned guys like Roy DeMeo and Gaspipe, men who turned into serial killers. The mob eventually killed them. Then Sammy said this. If Diddy were in the mafia and we knew what he was doing, he'd have been killed. No trial. Let that settle in. Even mobsters, people who admit to murder, think Diddy's alleged actions went too far. That's how serious this is. And Diddy isn't the only high-profile name locked up right now.
I think that's a great question, and I don't think we have the answer to it yet, because he is going to be transferred from this MDC Brooklyn facility, likely to a federal prison that's more of a long-term facility. It's likely going to be a place in New Jersey. He wants to be close to his family, and there is a place there that fits a lot of the things that he's looking for. He has asked for a drug and alcohol treatment program, so he wants to go to a prison that has a program that he can take and hopefully better himself so he doesn't have issues when he does finally get out. So he is looking for a place like that. So he will go somewhere else. But I think that's a great point. You don't want to just sit in solitary confinement for 3 years and not have any contact with anybody.
Luigi Mann, the man accused of shooting that healthcare CEO, is currently held at MDC Brooklyn. These facilities are used to managing famous inmates. But fame behind bars is a double-edged sword. You're a target because people want clout from attacking you. But you're also valuable because people want your money, influence, and connections for when you get out. Balancing safety without ending up in solitary confinement for years is almost impossible. It's mentally exhausting just to survive. There's also been speculation about the possibility of a presidential pardon.
One of the things I wanted to ask before we moved on, it's been a lot of back and forth as to will he, won't he, but any updates on whether or not President Trump is actually going to or not going to pardon him?
Yeah, no clue. There are obviously people who are, familiar with at least Diddy's thinking here and conversations that they say have taken place, and they feel like there is a real opportunity, a real chance that Donald Trump could pardon or commute Diddy's sentence. And obviously, with a swipe of the pen like that, Diddy could walk out then. And I suppose that would clear up a lot of his problems. But obviously, up until now, the White House has said, no, that's not true. The president is not going to take any action on Diddy.
But right now, the White House has made it clear no pardon is coming. Some people close to Diddy believe Trump might consider it, and theoretically, one signature could free him instantly. But officials said the president has no intention of getting involved. As one reporter said, if Trump wants to do something, he will. If he doesn't, he won't. At this stage, everything is just speculation.